Hi, my name is Brandy, and today we are going to be doing a little bit of talking about effective presentation styles. So I am super excited about this topic. This program was mostly sent towards folks presenting at the CET. Although I think moving forward, I would like to do more of these presentations throughout the year, just because this is sort of my own personal interest and hobby. But I did want to prioritize our CET presenters so that they could ask questions. And we can also chat a little bit about CET during the Q&A portion if you guys have any non-presentation related questions. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so again, my name is Brandy. I wanted to give you a little bit about my background just because, why would I even care to do a presentation on effective presentation skills? Ever since I graduated college back in 2015, I realized that there was a lot of things I didn't know about entering the workforce that I wish I had known. So I spent a lot of years where I started sort of giving presentations to student and early career professionals to help them feel more prepared in entering the workforce in that early career stage. And then sort of post that, I ended up teaching high school color guards. I'm now a jazzercise instructor. I've done obviously presentations in the soul and water space. So I really love giving presentations. I think they're fun. I enjoy this sort of branding and upgrade that presentations have gotten over the last 10 years. So I try to keep up with modern techniques and technology. So it's just an interest of mine. So any chance I get to chat with people about it, I like to utilize that. A couple of things that you might expect today. We're going to talk a little bit about some presentation statistics, some helpful information that you might not know, which is cool. Some helpful tips and tricks for navigating and thinking about your presentations to make it seem a little less daunting if you have a fear of public speaking or not sure what presentation program software you want to use. We'll kind of dive into some of those topics, and then some of my favorite takeaways and resources on sort of learnings. If these topics interest you and you want to keep diving more and more into it, then we'll go over some of my favorite helpful topics. But before we get into the statistics, I know we have a relatively small group this morning. So you're welcome to unmute or you can put it in the chat. But I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about a presentation that you were personally in, an attendee in, and that the presentation was maybe a little underwhelming. I don't need to know the organization or who did the presentation, but I do want to know sort of what might have been underwhelming for you. Was it how they spoke? Was it how the materials were presented? Did you walk away learning something that you had hoped to gain from that presentation? So if you can think back, I would like for you to tell me about a time when that happened. It doesn't have to be anything super long, but I would just love some input this morning. So I'll give you just a few minutes to think about the underwhelming portion, then we'll move on to the second question.
So Brandy, this is Christina.
Yeah.
I don't like to be super critical of other people's presentations because I know my skill set is not the greatest, but it's sort of a pet peeve when there's lots of verbiage on the slides and people just sort of read what's on the slides instead of using them as more of a tool. Yeah, that's something that I've noticed.
Yeah, because it's really hard to read a slide and listen to what they're presenting on. And then you also feel like, oh, well, it's on the slide for me to read, and then they're reading off the slide. It kind of feels a bit like maybe I could have gotten a handout and that would have given me the information. Sometimes it just depends, on how that goes. So I totally get that. Um, would anybody else like to share or put something in the chat? I have been in a lot of very scientific, very deep scientific presentations in the geology space. And I will say that a lot of times my most underwhelming presentation is when I'm not sure that I understand what the presenter wants me to learn from their presentation. They're like sort of spitting data and information at me, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to take away from that information. So I get a little like, okay, let's take a deep breath and maybe try to reevaluate.
Brandy,
Yeah.
many years ago, I took a concealed carry class, and the
Mm-hmm.
instructor, so-called instructor, would push play on a VHS tape. This is going to date me, right? So he would push play, and there was a man. If anybody is on this meeting that's seen this many years ago, was an older gentleman in a red bow tie, and he spoke in a monotone voice over, and I'm just like for hours. And the instructor would push pause, and he would ask if anybody had any questions, and then he would push play again. There was no instruction going on. It
Yeah.
was listening to a boring, bland video where somebody was sitting at a desk. There was no movement. There was nothing to keep anybody engaged, and there was very little instruction going on with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to me like maybe that person was kind of checking off a checklist. They were just kind of doing what they were maybe supposed to do, and there wasn't much passion about what they were trying to teach. So I totally agree. That can be really frustrating. So we've all been in these presentations, right? Like where we're like, okay, or like you're starting to lose interest in it, right? Like I get it. I totally get it. Does anybody else want to share any last ones before we move on? All right. Well, thank you, Darren and Christina, for sharing those. I really appreciate that. Hopefully, the one that's a little easier to answer is describe an exceptional presentation. So, hopefully, you have experienced at least one exceptional presentation sometime in your life. This could be a PowerPoint, this could be a teaching experience, like Darren mentioned, a concealed carry class. It can be really any sort of module where you were going to learn something. Maybe even a teacher in school, perhaps, if you had a really outstanding teacher that had lots of lesson plans, that had a specific model that they gave. Would anyone like to share any exceptional presentation experiences and why they thought that they were exceptional? Oh, Darren, you unmuted. Go ahead. Or Brad.
This is Brad. Several years ago, my wife was a teacher, and
Yeah.
she asked me to come to her class and talk about soil and soil health and life. And so I put together a presentation, and I said, "Hey, how long do I have?" And this is when I walked in the room. She said, "Oh, you got plenty of time. You got an hour." And they had to stop me because I'd used all the time. But it was interesting for the fact that the kids were interactive, and I haven't done a lot of presentations at that time, but they were interactive, and I think they could tell I was excited. I was way too long. That's my point. I went way too long, but I had found and I wish I could find it again, but I had found a video of some earthworms over a period of time taking a corn husk down a hole. So we'd watch that, and it just sparked a lot of questions and different things. And so, not to say my presentation was that great, but I think the enthusiasm that I had, it showed with, and these were children, so it worked out pretty well. I learned a lot from them. Of course, the conversations with my wife about being a little long-winded, but it was fun to get the energy back. And we've all been in places where you don't get the energy back.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot as well. Not that mine was that great, but just having energy.
Well, I would not undersell yourself, Brad, because children, I mean, they will, they do not quite have that same professionalism that like adults can have in situations like this. Like they are definitely, they're either excited about the topic or they are just not engaged at all. So it takes a lot of work to like really engage and keep up with that. So I think that if it went that long, then obviously they were enjoying it. So you were doing a great job. That's excellent. Would anybody else like to share an exceptional presentation that they've done or that they've witnessed?
Hey, Brandy.
Hey, Kelly.
You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't think of one in particular, but I always like a sense of humor. So
yeah.
If whoever's presenting can add a little humor, that's actually funny. Sometimes it's not, or sometimes I don't get.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I always appreciate that.
Yeah,
and
I love
of course, when technology works. Yeah, I've been to a lot of presentations too when technology is not working. And, you know, that's frustrating for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just can't be helped.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that definitely slows the process down for sure. But yeah, a good sense of humor goes a long way in a presentation. And that's one of those things that I think either for some people comes naturally or it's more of like a practice thing. But if you have that little spark of magic, then that always makes things go a little easier for sure. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I real quickly would like to share, again, one more exceptional experience. This was like years and years ago. I wouldn't say I was a reckless driver when I was younger, but somehow I managed to get a lot of random tickets for like going like 6 miles over the speed limit and things of that nature. So in one of these instances, I ended up going to driving school to get it, you know, off my record as we do, right? And I remember this driving school teacher, and you're like, oh my gosh, driving school, that's like the worst. Like who you already don't want to be there, right? But this woman was so passionate about like keeping people safe and like engaged in the topic and made it so worth it that I still think to this day, because we went and talked a little bit about road rage. And I still remember her saying, like, the thing that helps me the most is that when people are driving aggressively or driving in a way that bothers me or feels dangerous or scary, that I imagine that they have a pregnant wife in the car and that they're trying to get to the hospital because the baby's on its way. And I was like, wow, like that really does de-escalate my anxiety if I can send a generous thought that this person is dealing with a situation and they are driving recklessly and not meaning to because they are also scared in a situation, right? Like they need medical attention wherever the case is. Now, does that make it right? Not necessarily. Is that true? Probably not. But it makes me feel a lot better and not get so anxious with people. And I have remembered that time and time again. Like I constantly, especially in Raleigh with all the growth, you know, you see someone, you know, just the other day I didn't go fast enough at a green light and this guy, you know, gave me a hand gesture that was really nice. And, you know, and I just was like, okay, well, maybe he's like pressing the gas because he's trying to get to the hospital, you know, and again, probably not true, but it always stuck with me. And I think it was more about her presentation and her passion on how she spoke about things and her just generous nature that stuck with me. And that's why that stayed for so long. All right. Well, if anyone has any other ones that they want to share, feel free to put those in the chat. I'd love to hear about them. I love a good story. Okay, so let's jump into some of the statistics that you might not know. So these are more public speaking related. 75% of adults identify and they're estimated to be affected by public speaking. So that's normally some kind of anxiety driven, stress driven, visceral response to actually public speaking. 90%. Oh, sorry, my thing is messed up. That should be a little bit different. The icon should look different, but 90% of the anxiety we feel before giving a presentation comes from lack of preparation, right? That makes sense. Maybe we haven't practiced it. Maybe we kind of just threw our slide deck together. So something to note. 91% of presenters feel more confident if they present a well-designed slide deck. Okay, I can see that. Makes sense, right? And then 45% of presenters find it difficult to design a creative layout for presentations. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation, but I would say that most of these feel really true to me. So feel free that if you would like to put a thumbs up or a yes in the chat, if these feel, sound true to you, feel free to engage there. Okay. Also, I'm going to ask you for some engagement. You can come off the chat or you can put it in the chat box. All right, effective presentations. We have a combination of your voice, right? How you're projecting, your nonverbal communication skills, such as body language, maybe even like what you're wearing to some degree, your facial expressions, things like that. And then content, which would be mostly your slide deck, handouts, your content related materials. So of these categories, we're going to say they all equal 100%. I want you guys to assign a percentage to each of these categories and either come off mute or put them in the chat. So what percentage out of 100 do you think makes the most effective presentation based on your voice? What percentage would be nonverbal communication? And what percentage would be the content you're actually presenting on? Kayla says 40, 40, 20. Yeah. Okay. All right. Christina says 50% content and 25% the other two, but that might be boring. Okay. Yep. Brad and Darren said 40, 40, 20. They're in the same boat as Kayla. Chelsea also agrees with Kayla. Mikey says voice 30, nonverbal 30, and content 40. Okay, great. And Jessica's got 40, 40, 20. Love it. You guys are pretty good at these. I would be like, we're estimating about, 100%, but give or take, I'd be like all over the place. I'd be like at like 200%. I'd just be throwing out numbers. All right. So I think we had pretty good engagement. So let's move on and get the answers. Based on research, 38% of effective presentations actually use their voice and the fluctuation of voice and tone. It is nonverbal communication that helps sell their program or to, really help people learn. And only 7% of presentations that people feel are effective is actually due to content. Now, I don't know about you, but I was really shocked when I saw these numbers. I'm going to guess that you might also be at least a little bit shocked based on, our chat. So obviously it says right here that the ideal amount of eye contact to make an emotional connection is between 60 and 70%. So that doesn't give you much time to really look at your notes or look at your slide deck. So if you are reading straight off of a slide, then you're probably not making any real connection with your audience. Also, people are 22% more likely to remember a fact when it has been wrapped into a story. Can anybody put in the chat or raise their hand or their thumb if they feel like that might be true? Like, do you remember things more if there's a story associated with it? Yep, Brad and Darren, I got a thumbs up. Great. Love that. I know that's definitely true for me. Chelsea's got a thumbs up. Yep, Kelly, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Mikey said, I definitely enjoy hearing info within a story more than just a straight fact. Right, because you can remember that more. People's experience matter to us, and it's more ourselves in other people's shoes based on a story rather than just hearing a fact and remembering it. Yeah. And then 55% of people say a great story is primarily what holds their focus during a presentation. So again, that storytelling component is really important, which really feeds into the voice and the nonverbal cues, is like a real positive piece to that. Obviously, storytelling and content, you probably don't want to actually write your story up, on a slide or something like that. So it would be mostly be from your perspective. All right. So we're going to move on into the helpful tips and tricks of this program. My absolute favorite hack for doing presentations is trying to think about knowing your audience, right? I always try to give some thought to, why are you giving this presentation? What is your purpose? What do you want them to learn? Who is going to be in the audience, right? That was always really easy when I did geological presentations, because I knew I was delivering it to student and early career professionals. So their experience level with my topics were always the same. Things at CET, it might be a little bit more challenging. You might have some educators in your audience. You might have some administrative professionals in your audience. But I think in general, we have these tracks, which make it really easy to kind of help you gauge what your audience's level of knowledge on your topic might be. So like a more technical track probably will entice more of our technical district staff, right? What is important to them? What's important to them is important to you. What is their familiarity on this topic? That might be a hard one to gauge, but certainly worth giving some mental thought over. What is their history with you, and what questions might they have? So obviously, it's really helpful to sort of just kind of think about these items, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but it really will make a huge difference in thinking about how your presentation is going to go and what you want people to walk away with. So when I think about presenting, once I have identified who I think my audience is going to be, I always try to identify, what do I want them to learn? What is something that I want them to walk away understanding, or a story that I think might help them wrap this concept up, or what pictures might help ingrain this, what I want them to learn sort of in their head, right? So if you can really just spend some time thinking about 2 or 3 outcomes that you want them to walk away with, it doesn't need to be 5, it doesn't need to be 10. It can be as simple as between 1 and 3, to be honest with you. And most presentations are best if they only last about 20 minutes. And our CET presentations are between 15 and 30 minutes with Q&A included. So normally between 2 and 3 outcomes is plenty. If you have a 30-minute presentation, you could add a 4th or 5th outcome if you would like. But if you just give it some thought, then after you have that outline, you can kind of start figuring out how you want it to flow and what you want your slide deck to look like to enhance what you would like to tell them about your program. Okay, so slide deck preparation. Fewer slides, even fewer words. This webinar sort of situation is not the best example for this, because I'm not there with you in person, so you can't really see fully my body language. So I do have a few more words on these slides, but in general, when you're speaking in person, I would say that you really don't need a lot of words on your slides if you can get away from it and just, speak to the topic on the slide. Your voice tells a lot about a story, whether it be how interested you are in the topic, your passion for that project. Your tone of voice means a lot, and your enthusiasm can make a big difference as well. Also, the use of images help deliver memory to a topic. So I don't know if you knew that or not, but if you can have really good photographs, then it's a lot more likely that people will walk away with remembering information, whether they realize it or not, just because a picture was associated with the topic and what you were talking about. And And I have a little bit of a statistic or a biologist who did some research. He says that we are incredible at remembering pictures. Hear a piece of information, and 3 days later, you'll remember 10% of it. Add a picture, and you'll remember 65%. Experiments in memory and communication find that information delivered in pictures and images is more likely to be remembered than words alone. They call it pictorial superiority is the term for this scientific situation. And then also I did put this little picture of bullet points, kind of going into slide deck preparation. This is not really bullet points. These are mostly check boxes. I could not find a good picture of bullets. I would be cautious. One of my sort of recommendations is that bullet points are used really sparingly. If you can get away from using bullet points, I would try to use fewer of them. There is a lot of different alternatives to bullet points these days, such as like cute little icons that you can put, or you can just like sort of have a little extra space in between what you're writing and you don't even need the bullet point. Bullet points are always best, whether it's in reports or presentations, that it's more of listing something really short. So if you have something really short to list, then they're great for that. But in general, most people tend to overuse bullet points a lot. And if you see presentations more frequently that you think are really great and you went back and watched it, you would probably see that they used fewer and fewer bullet points than a lot of presentations that we tend to see. All right. Now, another big tip is engaging your audience. This goes a long ways, whether it be like asking questions just to make sure that they kind of stay intrigued on the topic. Or, you can absolutely think of an activity. If you need help coming up with an activity, feel free to ask me. I love to brainstorm an in-person activity. But it's a great way to include your audience and also create sort of this bond with them. And it also aids to the memory of the topic at hand. Also, unexpected moments grab people's attention. There's always this story of, what is it? It's Bill Gates did some kind of fundraising or some kind of special presentation about his nonprofit and the medical supplies that they give for malaria. Well, he actually brought this like canister of like mosquitoes. And when he was giving his presentation, he like opened up the canister and let these mosquitoes just fly all over the room amongst these like sort of high profile individuals. And so it really shocked people that he did something like that. Like these were not believed to have malaria or anything like that or carry any sort of diseases. But the case was that it just was this shock factor and it really resonated with people on the topic that they were given at hand. So sometimes there's a lot of different creative ways that you can intrigue your audience with just a little extra brain and thought. Content comprehension. According to research, participants learn less when the presenter is if they're taking notes while the presenter is speaking. I don't often see that in the soil and water space, but I do see it from time to time. I think also this kind of goes hand in hand with having really wordy slides. So I always recommend that if you have information that's really, really important that you need people to walk away with, and you're like, oh, I need to put it on the slide because it's that important, I would highly recommend you think of a way to like maybe turn it into a handout and let your audience take that with them. Because they can have all your information, resources, they have your contact stuff to ask questions, but also they're not focused on reading your slide over what you're saying. Does that make sense? So just something to think about. There are alternatives if you feel like you need a lot of words. Typically, my one exception to this is we do a lot of government meetings, right, in this space. So a lot of times when we're talking about policy and rules and we have presentations that are associated with that, then obviously there's not a good way around that. We need to be able to put policies up on a screen for people to read. So, but just know that people can't memorize words as easy as they can pictures, feelings, or sounds. And if they can't be reading, then they can't be fully listening to you, which is really unfortunate. You work so hard on your presentation. We want folks to listen. So my 5 things that I think about, and you are welcome to come up with your own tidbits on how you think about. But for me, when I'm thinking about what I want out of a presentation for me and my audience, I think of the 5 C's. And for me, that's connect, curiosity, clarity, confidence, and creativity. So for me, I want to make a connection with my audience. I want us to share this space and this moment in time together. So that comes from me being curious about where they're at, knowing their level, what my history is with them, and what I think they might be interested in hearing on my topic. Being really clear about what you want them to learn and maybe not throwing too much information, just really having the information laid out so that they can easily understand it. Confidence a lot of times comes from practicing and just like being engaged about your topic. If you enjoy talking about it to a stranger, then you can easily present on it, no problem. Okay, you just need a couple of slides or you just need a couple of ideas to jot down, and a lot of times it'll go off great. And then any throw into a presentation is excellent. That really goes a long ways, helps people memorize things. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of good ways you can be creative in a presentation. Okay, so now, Brandy, you're asking me, what do I do? Like where do I start? You've got these tips and tricks, but what's the point, right? First, I want you to brainstorm your audience needs and your outcomes, right? What do you think that they need? What do you want them to walk away with? Second, I spelled create wrong. You should really have someone review your slides, lesson learned. Do as I say, not as I do, right? Create a slide deck to deliver your message. I personally love Canva. It's a little tricky to use at first, but in general, there is so much functionality with Canva. I think Adobe has a lot of different slide options. Google Slides exist, and I think it's pretty easy to use. Obviously, a classic is Microsoft PowerPoint, and I do not want to discourage anybody from ever using Microsoft PowerPoint. I think it's a great tool, and it's really simple to use in terms of it looks very similar to Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. So like navigating functions is easy. I will say that some new presentation specific softwares like Canva or Google Slides tend to have more functionality built in for being like creative and maybe setting up your slides to make it easier on you as a presenter. So just things to be mindful of. And I would say if you do have a software that you like in mind, such as Canva, there is a free version of Canva as well as there is a paid version. I personally use Canva for a lot of things. So I just pay for the version that I have, whether my employer pays for it or not. And it's mostly just because I don't like to choose between the things I can't use because I have to pay for them. I just want everything at my disposal so I don't have to worry about it. It's also great for marketing for your district. It also can be used for educational material. So it would be something I would think would be fruitful for districts. I know a lot of districts do use Canva, but it's worth looking into. They also have where you can like mail merge and create learning models with videos now. So they are constantly putting a lot of effort and energy into that platform. All right, so after you've created a slide deck and after you figured out what program you'd like to use, then obviously create your talking points, okay? And you could also create your talking points before your presentation style. That's totally fine too. You can do either way. And then I would say practice. And it's always a bonus if you have a friend to practice with or have someone that you can send a draft of your presentation to and get some feedback. Some of my favorite resources to sort of help if you ever have any extra time on your hands and you're just curious about this topic. There are tons and tons of TED Talks about public speaking or just like watching TED Talks on topics that interest you. They have a lot of great presentation skills that they're utilizing for a TED Talk. So a lot of times you can get a lot of really great inspiration from those. I really love Dare to Lead by Brene Brown and the podcast series that is associated with her Dare to Lead program. I think it's really about courageous leaders and vulnerability and communication. And there's just a lot of really good ideas and exercises and information that can really be converted into so many different avenues in the professional space, including presentations. The Art of Gathering, Why We Meet and Why It Matters by Priya Parker. This book is actually more geared towards meeting with people in a very intentional way. So it sort of came out of, there's a lot of things even about COVID and people meeting virtually and how to better connect with people virtually. But there's also a lot of in-person stuff. So she's just got some really great creative ideas, and a lot of them are really simple and they make a lot of sense to me personally. So it is worth reading, whether it be you're posting a baby shower or you're going to have family Thanksgiving and you want to spice it up a little bit. Like, this is a great book that can just cross over a bunch of different avenues in life. And then Karate has this Think Outside the Slide website, and I will make sure that that website is on our presenter page so that you can access some of these. I'll actually put a link to several of these so that you can have access to these post this presentation. Also, I've added to our little CET event website, I have put a couple of slide decks that I've created with CET logos, a logo for the division, a logo for the association, and DEA. So just in hopes that if you want to use it, you're welcome to. It's at your disposal. You can just download it and edit it. If the format that I've put it in isn't easily accessible to you, just let me know and I will download it in PowerPoint or Google Slides, and I will send you those links so that you can have easily accessible slides that you don't have to work too hard on, and to make it as simple as I can. All right, and that's really all that I have on this presentation. I do have a works cited slide, but I will share some of those, like I said, after the presentation on our website. So this opens up the Q&A portion. If there are any questions that I can help you with as far as presenting.
Brandy, I know you mentioned Canva and things. Do you happen to know if the Google, is that free or is that a small fee? Or
I think Google Slides is mostly free. Yeah, I would say that it's probably, if somebody knows, I haven't used that as much, but I think most Google products aim to be free because they normally have like other ways of getting, like, you know, technically your information can be like sold, or like they can use it to like collect data on you. So they make everything free so that they can do that. But you know, for a lot of people, they don't care. Like, it's not a big, and that's not why I don't use Google. I don't have an issue with that necessarily, but
okay,
that is Google's model. So, but yeah, it is free, and they do have a lot of different options. So it is a great option if you're looking for something that's easy to use other than, say, PowerPoint.
My PowerPoints are, I love all your the different slides and stuff. My stuff's pretty bland. I know it. And I never knew else where to go. I've heard of Canva. We work with some others that use Canva, and I've seen some of the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
No more than I use a program 3 times a year. I kind of need the basic version. But,
yeah, and that's a great place to start for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this is Kelly. I use Canva also and love it. And it is so easy to use, and I'm definitely not a techie person at all. So just give it a try, Brad, if you can. But also, when you first start using options that are free, the more you use it, the fewer free options there are, which is, you know, not terribly surprising. But I have found that our county has a license, and so through the county, I was able to get what they call the professional version. So I have access. So you might just try it out for free, and then if you really like it, ask your county IT if they can put you on their license, or I think they have a limited number of how many people can be on that license. So I'll try out.
Yeah, I know that I've paid for it.
Oh, the other thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say, you can, once you do your presentation in Canva, you can share it or save it as a PowerPoint. So just if you save it as a PowerPoint, you definitely need to go back and go through. You might need to tweak things a little bit because I've noticed sizing and is off a little bit, but it's kind of nice for people who say, well, I don't know how to do Canva, you know,
Yeah,
PowerPoint, and it still works.
yeah, I do that one a lot too, Kelly. I like to put it into PowerPoint when I do a presentation. So then that way it's like not like right now I'm using Canva Present. So it's like on the internet, but you can download it as a PDF or like a PowerPoint because, you know, people are more a lot of times using the PowerPoint like system of how to present is easier for people. So yeah, just going through it to making sure that like your sizing on your fonts are good and that sometimes the fonts go a little crazy, but in general, the pictures and the graphics for the most part stay pretty good. I've only had a couple that have gotten a little wonky. Thank you for sharing that though, Kelly. I appreciate that. I love another Canva user. And maybe I think at some point I do want to do like a Canva tutorial on ways to use Canva for soil and water district offices, because I do think it's a great tool to have, whether we're marketing information for farmers or whether it be educational purposes or presentations for your local government boards, you know, whatever the case may be, building logos. There is a lot of good accessibility, and the pro membership is only like $120 a year. So it's really not too bad if you pay it yearly. Love that. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, then I suppose I will let you guys go. And I hope that you guys can stay super dry out there and safe today. I know that the weather is bananas, so just everyone take care and let us know if you need anything or contact your regional coordinator if you need any support due to the storm. We will figure something out. But yeah, I will make this available on the website later, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for joining.